In the third year of our marriage, he became increasingly taciturn in front of me. He also came home later and later. I knew that his heart had changed. He fell in love with his young, cute little secretary who was always clinging to him and wanted to give her a home. Regarding this, I didn't cry or make a scene. I just asked him to give me one more month. I wanted to take back the memories between us one by one. During the month when he left me alone to heal my wounds, I quickly reorganized the company, divided the property, and transferred the resources. Finally, with a look of astonishment in his eyes, I politely kicked him out of both the company and our home. Hilarious. I'm the female lead in a redemption story. Since I have the ability to redeem others, how could I allow myself to fall into the mire? When Joseph was driven out of the house, he had an extremely astonished expression on his face. Just an hour ago, he received the news that he had been dismissed by the board of directors in front of the company's administrative building. When he wanted to go back to the home he shared with his mistress, the fingerprints on the door of the luxury apartment in the city center had already been deleted. All of Joseph's things had been cleared out by me a week ago, packed up, and sent to Nora. They were received by the nanny hired by him for Nora on her behalf. He hadn't come home often in the past 6 months. Most of his commonly used clothes were left at the place where he had settled Nora. Even in the past 2 months, he had taken Nora on trips in the name of business trips. He held the hand of his little secretary, who was 5 years younger than him, and walked through every place that held memories of him and me. Joseph said that since I wanted to clear away the memories, he also wanted to bid farewell to the past. And his way of saying goodbye was to bring another girl who somewhat resembled me when I was young to replace me and become the new owner of this relationship. At this point, I could no longer tell how sincere Joseph had been towards me in the past. Once, when he loved me, he would have risked his life for me. But now I realized that he seemed to love the freshness of falling head over heels in love with different people more. In the past, as the tragic male second lead in a bitter and tragic love story, he was destined to sacrifice his whole life for the female lead and finally die alone. And I redeemed him and gave him a happy ending. It seemed that the story started to go bad from that time. The charm of the tragic male second lead lies in that he would always choose to give his sincere heart to the female lead no matter what. Readers always couldn't help but fantasize about how they would cherish such a sincere heart if they got it. But reality is always similar. When he broke free from the established setting and was no longer the bitter and tragic male second lead who only knew how to give blindly, he seemed to have become the most ordinary man. He would be greedy, get angry, tell lies, and change his heart. At the beginning, I chose to stay for him after completing the task. We walked into the marriage hall hand in hand, started a family, and built a career. If this were a novel, it should have stopped here, but life is not a novel. We had a period of passionate days after marriage, and then life returned to normal. He was still busy with his career, and I was also unwilling to be trapped at home. Although Joseph's mother often complained that no woman was like me, who didn't care about the family after getting married, she was dissatisfied that Joseph had already provided me with such a superior material life, yet I couldn't take good care of Joseph in daily life. Such a look on her face was completely different from that of the kind woman who had a serious illness with no money for treatment back then and held my hand in the hospital, sighing again and again that it was good that Joseph had me by his side. Living in wealth over the years, the affluent life had raised her standards. She increasingly felt that I didn't deserve Joseph. But even though she looked down on me, she couldn't change the current situation. In the company founded jointly by Joseph and me, we each had half of the say. Although we were husband and wife, different factions had formed under Joseph and me in the company. The two sides formed a healthy competition and maintained a delicate balance. Over the years, the market value of the company had been rising continuously, and so had the net worth of Joseph and me. Everything was developing in a good direction. Regarding Joseph's dark past, the childhood shadows of being bullied and living under someone else's roof were gradually fading away from him. Perhaps life was too comfortable, or perhaps Joseph really just liked that type. He had an affair in the third year of our marriage. The young man who once looked at me with burning eyes and told me his sincere feelings over and over again changed his heart without any warning. That little girl named Nora caught his eye not long after she came to the company for an internship. In just half a year, Nora was promoted to the position of Joseph's secretary. During this half year, Joseph and I had been in a cold war. When we were extremely angry and arguing, we had even said harsh words to each other that we would go our separate ways and not interfere with each other. Everyone was waiting for me, a strong businesswoman, to fight over love, to have a fierce quarrel with the young girl. But I just put more energy into my career. The family situation was already a mess, and the root cause of the mess wasn't on me. I couldn't slack off in my career because of this, lest I be dragged into the mire. I didn't want to bother with Joseph at first, but what he did was really too eye-catching. After all, it was our company. If he caused a scandal, it wouldn't be good for me. Eventually, I couldn't help but give him a few words of advice. At that time, I was still quite confident that the person Joseph loved the most was me. The years of sharing weal and woe in the past were so impressive. Joseph and I were not only lovers but also comrades in arms. But Joseph's response to this was completely indifferent. He said that when he saw the ambition in that little girl's eyes, he couldn't help but think of the past. We had suffered a lot in the past, so now he couldn't help but give Nora a helping hand. I understood the implication of his words and remained silent without saying more. It was also from that time that I started to be on guard against Joseph in my career. It wasn't something that could be completed overnight to split up the company that we had founded together. On the surface, I remained calm, but my actions didn't stop. During this process, I didn't fail to give Joseph opportunities. But he never restrained himself, and Nora needed his help more and more. In the end, he even bought a villa in the suburbs for her and built their cozy love nest. I don't know what was on his mind. Joseph didn't hide these things from me when he did them. When I came to this world and chose to win his heart, I had already made my identity clear to him. He knew that I couldn't go back and could only stay in this world, by his side. He came home less and less often. When we occasionally met, he would speak in a rather sarcastic tone, saying, "The strong businesswoman is finally willing to come home. I sometimes wonder if you really came for me. I feel that compared to me, you always care more about money." He seemed to be giving me an ultimatum when he dropped this sentence and then walked out the door. He was complaining about me, complaining that I refused to focus on the family, complaining that after life got better, I still stayed in the business field and became his rival. But when we were so poor that we only had our lives left, my skills, my ambition for career, and my abilities were the things that could truly redeem him. He knew that, but he was fearless. I didn't pay attention to Joseph's provocation. In order not to let him find out that I had started to transfer assets, I had to put pressure on him in my career and push him harder and harder in the company. Just when I thought we would break up peacefully after everything was settled, something unexpected happened. It was on a sunny afternoon. Joseph and I were wearing our wedding rings and accepting an interview with a financial magazine. The reporter asked a lot of interesting stories that had spread during the passionate period of our relationship in the past. Joseph answered with a smile and played the role of a doting husband perfectly in front of the camera. Nora was also there, outside the camera. Her disappointed eyes lingered on our ring fingers many times and finally dimmed completely. This conversation didn't end perfectly after all. When the reporter mentioned the passionate vow that Joseph made when he confessed his love to me, Nora couldn't bear it anymore. She turned around and rushed out of the recording studio. Joseph's expression in front of the camera changed instantly. He stood up, didn't even have time to pick up his suit jacket that was placed aside, and chased after her without caring about his image. On that day, everyone witnessed Joseph's passion. He was like a teenager in the first flush of love, burning with his sincere love, not afraid of rumors at all. And all the bad influences he brought had to be cleaned up by me. I looked at the script he left on the table, which still printed the famous vow he made when he proposed to me. He said, "Every boy is destined to fall in love with the girl who saves him from the darkness again and again. In this life, Joseph will always exist only for Julia." Yes, in a romantic story, a young man will be loyal to his girl. But after the story ended, what was left for the lovesick men and women in the mortal world was only the reality of life. No one could be exempt from worldly affairs. I just hoped that Joseph could be more infatuated and muddle-headed. The comfortable life in these years had made him lose his sense of crisis. Many people on the board of directors were already dissatisfied with him. He was still immersed in his passionate love and took it for granted that he and I were a community of interests and that I would handle all the negative news for him. That night, Joseph came back with the drafted divorce agreement. We can go to get the divorce certificate first and suppress the news. Releasing it now will affect the company's stock price. He sat in front of me and spoke to me in a very calm manner as if it were a negotiation. He wasn't negotiating but ordering. The tragic male second lead, who was too used to relying on me for everything, even when it came to divorcing me now, was still accustomed to leaving the mess for me to clean up. He said, "Julia, I loved you very much before. Your calmness and rationality helped me get through many difficulties. But sometimes, I think you're more like a reliable partner. People won't regard their comrades in arms as their lovers. In the past, we only had each other by our side and could only see each other. Only now do I know what true love is." He said that my love was too purposeful. In the past, it was to win his heart, and later it was for wealth, power, and status. He said that he had been always tired of moving forward in his life and had never had the chance to stop and feel true love. Now he wanted to make up for his regrets. I calmly looked at the person in front of me and listened to him telling me bit by bit about his infatuation with another girl and his accusations against me. But what was on my mind was the assets that I had transferred out now. Half a year ago, I had already invested in another company in my father's name. Although there were still some procedures left unfinished, it was almost done. Just looking at Joseph, who was still constantly accusing me in front of me, I changed my mind. Rather than transferring myself away, I now wanted to drive him out. If I agreed to the divorce like this, the seemingly fair division of property equally would be too lenient to him. After all, most of the funds and efforts for establishing this company came from me. As for the small part that Joseph did, it should also be counted as compensation for me. Seeing this, I showed a bit of hesitation on my face and asked him softly, "Does it have to be so sudden?" Unexpectedly, such words seemed to amuse him, and a bit of sarcasm appeared on Joseph's face. "We've been in a cold war for such a long time. It was you who didn't want to give in before. What? Do you regret it now?" I lowered my eyes and didn't respond, which was regarded as acquiescence. Seeing that I didn't refute him as usual, Joseph was stunned for a moment, and then he laughed softly. He said, "Let's settle it quickly. It's a pity that the little girl has been following me without a proper status. She can't wait any longer, and I don't want her to feel insecure." Yes, he had always been like this when he was infatuated with someone. I had always known that. Fortunately, I had long stopped having any expectations for Joseph now. If there was any affection left, it had been worn away completely during the past 6 months when he indulged Nora in provoking me time and time again. Otherwise, I would surely be deeply hurt. By now, I could already separate him from the person who loved me in the past. In the past, Joseph was much thinner and frilier than he is now. There was always an indelible gloom between his eyebrows and eyes, far from his noble appearance now. But at that time, just because of a word from me, he would silently read through all the relevant books in the library just to find a page of notes that I had forgotten in the pages of a book. When he handed the notes to me, I was completely stunned. I had already asked my roommate to complete the notes, but he stubbornly looked at me, with his lips tightly pursed, insisting that I take the paper he handed over, because that was the only thing he could do for me at that time. In this way, I accompanied him from our school days to the present when he had achieved success in his career. I changed Joseph little by little into his current calm and confident appearance as if I were taking care of a flower. Unfortunately, when the flower was in full bloom, it was picked by others. I told Joseph that it was okay to get divorced, but he needed to give me 1 more month. He asked me what I was going to do. I just lowered my eyes and answered vaguely, to sort out the memories of the past. Such an answer seemed to surprise him a little. Since the miscarriage in the second year of our marriage, we had been getting along with each other in a businesslike way like colleagues. We hadn't spoken such words expressing our attachment to each other for a long time. He twitched the corners of his mouth as if he was about to say some sarcastic words. But finally, a trace of reluctance flashed in his eyes. Joseph agreed to my proposal, however. From today on, he would live separately from me first. This was also Nora's request. She's not like you. She relies on me. She's the flower I've pampered. I've spoiled her so much that she's a bit narrow-minded. I don't want her to be aggrieved at all. When Joseph said this, a bit of helplessness that was almost doting appeared on his face. I didn't have time to listen to his feelings and closed the door without hesitation to see him off. That night, I received a text message from Nora. She showed off to me in the manner of a winner, saying that Joseph would take her to another place for the next month and that they were going on a trip. I asked Joseph if this could be regarded as an early honeymoon. He said that I had a lot of ideas in my head, but he didn't deny it. As if she thought that typing couldn't convey her joy of victory, Nora called me. She emphasized the word honeymoon in her words. Hearing this, I couldn't help laughing softly. Wish you a good time, I said. Please be deeply immersed in your love and unable to extricate yourselves. The deeper the love, the better. After all, the memories I want to take back are not only those expired feelings but also everything that I have truly brought to him over the years. The first thing I want to settle with Joseph is the company's resources. Over the years, Joseph was responsible for internal decisions, while most of the company's clients were brought in by me. In the past 6 months, I had spent a lot of time networking, and the client resources had been gradually transferred to the new company by me. However, the reputation of the new brand hadn't been completely established yet. People were still more willing to cooperate with the old brand that Joseph and I had founded together. Now that Joseph took the initiative to mess things up, it was like handing me a pillow just when I was sleepy. 5 days after Joseph set off, I deliberately let out the rumor that we were going to get divorced. Before, there were just such speculations in the company, but now I myself confirmed it. Joseph's trusted secretary sensed something was wrong and was eager to contact him. But Joseph himself didn't reply for a long time. I just revealed to Nora a little bit of the news that I was going to rely on our common relationship to retain Joseph, and she clung to him even tighter. On the 5th day, I timed it right and called Joseph. A few ambiguous words made Nora extremely jealous. She confiscated Joseph's phone and pestered him not to look at any electronic communication devices anymore. Joseph also indulged her. Except for arranging some work matters with his secretary before leaving, he really didn't ask about the company's affairs throughout the whole process. Of course, he wasn't completely unconcerned. When his assistant asked him what to do if there were problems with the company's affairs during his absence, his reply was, "Go to Julia. The company is the result of the efforts of both of us. She won't be willing to let the company have problems." The secretary was shocked by his confident and arrogant words, but Joseph didn't care at all. "You don't understand her. She loves me. If she can't hold on to our family, she will surely hold on to our company." You see, Joseph was actually more confident than I was about the fact that I loved him. He just cut off contact so confidently. These days, he should still be staying in the small town that had trapped his entire childhood. Nora might be tired of being around him, listening to him tell the stories between him and me over and over again, and finally gently coaxing him, "You have me now. I'll do better than her and love you more than her." Finally, 2 weeks after Joseph lost contact, his subordinates defected. Divorce is not a trifling matter. There are many interests involved behind it. Joseph is so infatuated with love now that during the week when he was out of touch, almost all the projects under his faction were about to be snatched away by others. The loss of benefits caused by the loss of projects was only temporary. But Joseph's muddled attitude now was really disheartening after all. In fact, the day before Joseph handed me the divorce agreement in person, Nora had already spread the news all over the world that Joseph was going to divorce me. Coupled with my ambiguous responses these days, everyone in the company knew that the company was going to undergo great changes. Under such circumstances, how could Joseph be absent? After all, everyone is working for a living. No one wants to follow a boss who is so lovesick and muddled. Thanks to some confidential documents brought by his confidant, the board of directors' impression of Joseph quickly deteriorated. And I also got some unexpected surprises. At present, I'm sitting in front of the major shareholder. Watching the other party's face gradually turn ugly because he couldn't get in touch with Joseph, I spoke as if I were distressed. Perhaps he's avoiding seeing me. After all, we're getting divorced. But being swayed by emotions is the most taboo thing in business. Even newcomers in the industry should understand this truth. We didn't say anything more. Only our intersecting gazes reached a consensus. Actually, when I first found out that Joseph was having an affair, I also reflected on myself. At that time, we had been in a Cold War for nearly half a year because we lost our first child. The reason was that Joseph's mother caused the miscarriage. My positive attitude towards contraception before made her not believe that I was willing to give birth to this child at ease. So she bribed the servants around me and put the folk prescriptions for ensuring pregnancy that she got from somewhere into my diet every day. She firmly believed that if I kept taking this, I could give birth to a boy for the Joseph family. She was so obsessed that she was almost crazy. Although I was very careful to avoid her, I still couldn't guard against it in the end. The child miscarried under the effect of those so-called pregnancy-preserving medicines. Later, the doctor told me that even if the child had been born, it would have been a deformed baby in the end. Joseph's mother ground the ashes of the baby boys who died shortly after birth that she bought into powder and put it in my diet. I had been eating these things since the first bite after I got pregnant. For this reason, I went to her home and made a big scene. That time, Joseph stood in front of his teary-eyed mother and asked me how long I was going to make a fuss. In his opinion, his mother had good intentions. If it hadn't been for my increasingly bad attitude towards his mother after I married him, she wouldn't have adopted such an extreme way and still secretly hidden it from me. There will be more children. We still have a long future ahead. When he said this, impatience was written all over his face. At that time, looking at the man in front of me, I still felt strange. After all, Joseph was abducted and sold to a small village by human traffickers when he was a child. There, he didn't have enough to eat or wear, and he was taken out by his fierce adoptive father to work every day. This led to Joseph's distorted and inferior personality. Later, he was finally found and brought back home, but there was only a seriously ill mother left at home. At that time, I was already by Joseph's side. Being reunited with his relatives didn't improve his living conditions at all. He still couldn't afford the tuition and living expenses, and he even had to take time to earn money for his mother's medical treatment. Once, Joseph and I took turns to take care of Joseph's mother who was lying in bed. At that time, she was so afraid of losing me, a silly girl who was willing to sacrifice, by her son's side. So she was so kind and gentle to both me and Joseph. Even, in order not to be a burden to us, she wanted to commit suicide, but was saved by Joseph and me who arrived in time. Joseph's mother's act of being willing to sacrifice finally made Joseph experience the belated maternal love and family affection. After that, he swore that he would definitely make the two women he loved the most live a very good life in the future. He didn't forget his promise, but only half of it was fulfilled. His mother was still one of the women he loved the most in this world. The other one was no longer me. But it didn't matter anymore. After I experienced that almost unbearable pain and confusion, one day, outside Joseph's office, I saw Nora's young and delicate face as she was being intimate with him. When she turned sideways and lowered her head, there was something of me in her eyebrows and eyes. At that moment, I suddenly realized. All of this had come to this point just because human nature is cheap. People always want someone younger when they already have someone by their side. After all, there aren't so many substitutes and first loves in this world. Loving someone or something is just because people have always liked that type from the beginning to the end. After I stopped expecting anything from Joseph, he noticed my indulgence, his affair became blatant, and he even deliberately showed off in front of me. He used his mistress to threaten me, to make me angry and frightened, and finally make me give in to him and hand over everything in the company and return to the family. I thought he was ridiculous. If mistresses were so useful, I would have bought 10 or 8 for the bosses of rival companies long ago. I'm not stupid. I was willing to help the pitiful Joseph to become better, but I wasn't willing to be dragged into the mire by the greedy Joseph. He couldn't threaten me like this. On the contrary, it would only make me run faster and act more ruthlessly. Now that the 1-month deadline was about to pass, Nora probably felt relieved and let Joseph get his phone back. First, he saw a bunch of missed calls from his secretary and the major shareholder on his phone and quickly called them back. But now no one was willing to tell him what was going on. Those who had a good relationship with him subtly advised him to coax me and not make me angry. Joseph misunderstood. He thought that I was jealous of Nora in front of others. After not getting any useful information, he still sent me a text message. He said that he was at our former middle school and that the beauty here reminded him of a lot of memories about our past. The hint of regret revealed in his words made him think that he could hook me again for 10 days or half a month. What a joke. By now, who would still pay attention to him? I immediately took a screenshot of the message sent by Joseph and sent it to Nora, with a note hoping that she could keep a better eye on Joseph. If she really had the ability, Joseph shouldn't have any other thoughts when he was with her. Young girls are good at this point. They are quick-tempered, can't bear to be provoked, and are highly motivated. That night, I learned from my assistant that Joseph's return trip had been postponed. Those people who were still eagerly waiting for him to come back and take charge in the company should completely give up hope after tonight. Thinking of this, I was in an extremely good mood. Rarely, I lit some aromatherapy and went to bed early. In my dream, there was an 18-year-old boy, sitting beside me with a blushing face and singing a love song. He asked me, "Julia, will we be together forever?" No. I wanted to tell him that you had an affair. You were the first one whose heart changed. When two people who once loved each other deeply part, there will surely be painful involvements. Those who betray true love deserve to be cut into pieces. And I, Julia, will always love myself. Joseph finally came back. He really seemed a bit regretful now. The trip with Nora wasn't as pleasant as what was shown in Nora's WeChat moments. Nora actually has some problems in her mind. I could see this more clearly than Joseph. At the beginning, Joseph admired the drive in her bones and thought it was similar to mine back then. Joseph finally came back. He really seemed a bit regretful now. The trip with Nora wasn't as pleasant as what was shown in Nora. So far, Nora's life had been smooth sailing. Joseph liked her from the moment he saw her. In this relationship, she had almost always been in the position of a winner, haughtily accepting the treasures offered by Joseph. But now, in her eyes, Joseph was wavering. He started to take the initiative to contact me and miss our past when she thought she had the situation under control. This was a real betrayal in Nora's eyes. She couldn't behave as gentle and charming as before. Joseph was a bit tired from being tormented by her. When he sat opposite me again, there was an unstoppable tiredness on his face. It seems that President Joseph didn't have a pleasant trip. I was in an extremely good mood. I handed the newly drafted divorce agreement to him and could even tease him a little. Joseph showed a bitter smile. He was just about to say something. But his eyes fell on the clause in the agreement that required him to leave the house with nothing. He raised his head and looked at me with reproachful eyes, as if he thought I was being too unreasonable. He threw the thin piece of paper aside, leaned back on the sofa, and called my name in an almost scoundrel tone. "I promise to compensate you as much as I can within my ability, but Julia, you're too greedy," he said. "Not really. I think it's just right," I smiled faintly. "After all, everything you have was given by me. There's nothing wrong with me taking it all back." These words hit Joseph's sore spot, and his face suddenly darkened. After becoming President Joseph, he actually didn't like others to mention our past. After all, in that story, he was always on the receiving end of my kindness. But in order to create an image of a family-oriented person, he always had to endure the stuffiness and often said to the outside world, "Without Julia, there would be no me now." But he didn't think so in his heart. Just like now, he looked at me, narrowed his eyes, and there was a threatening tone in his voice. "Julia, you know this is impossible." "Why is it impossible?" I replied with a smile. "I consulted Mr. Huang beforehand. His wife is a lawyer by profession, and she supports me in doing this." Joseph's expression changed instantly. He wanted to step forward. But he was stopped by the 4 bodyguards I hired and could only sit back in his seat, with an uncertain look on his face. "Mr. Huang is his friend. Over the years, Joseph has embezzled a lot of money from the company through Inyang contracts, and a good portion of it was used by him to bribe Mr. Huang. The amounts he embezzled were enough to send him to prison for 7 or 8 years, thanks also to the fact that Joseph used to act recklessly in the past and let his subordinates take the blame. After his confidant completely took sides, he spilled the beans about everything Joseph had done over the years. We hit it off immediately and neither of us wanted Joseph to have the possibility of making a comeback. At present, Joseph didn't know exactly how much evidence I had in hand. Since he didn't want to sign, I just held my phone. I told him that I had already arranged for the person who would report him. I was just waiting for a phone call to notify me and then submit the materials immediately. Reluctantly, in order to calm me down, he signed this divorce agreement. We went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to apply for divorce, and then there was a 1-month cooling off period. Joseph had a gloomy face throughout the whole process. When I let him leave, he took out his phone immediately and asked his confidant about the current situation. Apparently, the reply from the other side satisfied him. After hanging up the phone, Joseph still had the mood to turn around and smile at me. "Julia, you tricked me." At the same time, I also received a message on my phone. "Sister, I've replied to him according to your request." Seeing this, I also smiled. Joseph was about to say something when suddenly the horn of a car beside us sounded. The car window was rolled down, revealing Nora's complacent face. Just as Joseph was about to walk towards her, he suddenly stopped in his tracks and whispered softly in my ear. He said, "Julia, the message I sent you before was sincere. I don't necessarily have to choose her." After saying that, he left in a hurry. I knew that he was eager to check on the company's current situation. Not long after, a message came from the other end of my phone. The person on the other side told me that after Joseph arrived at the company, he forcefully took back several projects that I had intercepted with an aggressive attitude. After finding that everything was still within his control, he visibly relaxed. But he didn't let his guard down either. He started to contact several of his business partners and then called in his confidants for a meeting. Although my assistant replied to him as I requested, saying that I just happened to hear some rumors and didn't have any substantial evidence, he was still afraid that I had something in my hand that could threaten him. After cleaning up the traces on his side, he still didn't feel at ease. When we were comrades in arms, I couldn't get his respect. But the fact that I had become his enemy made him feel scared. After all, he was just relying on the fact that I came for him, that I was the heroine sent by the system specifically to redeem him. My love and indulgence in the past had given him too much confidence. I was the only salvation for the helpless Joseph back then. I was the person who firmly rushed towards him no matter how many times among thousands of people. So much so that he always thought that at this time, I should still be devoted to him wholeheartedly. Joseph wanted to make a comeback with tough measures, but the board of directors no longer trusted him. Joseph noticed this and began to try his best to make up for the losses. If I were Joseph, after erasing the traces of what I had done, I would definitely fight back against those who could threaten me at all costs. But Joseph isn't me. He was used to being President Joseph and used to commanding everything from a high position. He had long lost the ruthlessness and drive he had in the beginning. Moreover, in his imagination, things didn't seem that bad yet. The quickest and least costly way he thought of was to win back my heart. A week after we signed the divorce papers, Joseph, who thought he had stabilized the situation at the company, began to frequently ask me out. Although I always refused him, he still firmly believed that he held the dominant position in this relationship. He tactfully inquired about my recent schedule and began to court me vigorously. Nora has resigned now. She has moved into the luxury apartment in the city center that Joseph bought in his mother's name and is waiting contentedly to become a full-time housewife. For a moment, it seemed that my position and hers had been reversed. In the past, Joseph revolved around her at the company, and now he was revolving around me. The difference was that Nora was so unpopular. So much so that even though Joseph had been showing off for almost half a month, she still didn't know about it. I had to help her. So I informed my assistant that the next time Joseph came to send flowers, remember to take a photo of the card on the flowers and send it to Nora. That night, I accepted Joseph's invitation. He took me to the restaurant that he had always said he would take me to. Just like now, he was sitting in front of me. I don't know if it was my illusion, but when facing me again, he seemed a bit nervous. When we were so poor that we couldn't afford to eat, I once swore that when I became successful one day, I would definitely bring you here for a date. I didn't expect that when the wish came true, everything had already changed. As he said this, he turned his head to look at the night view outside the floor-to-ceiling windows and sighed a little. This Sky restaurant is located in the most prosperous area in the city center. The floor-to-ceiling windows on the 38th floor offer a panoramic view of the best scenery of the whole city. Joseph was silent. At this moment, I didn't know whether he was thinking about the 3 years when he chased me or the summer nights when we walked hand in hand again and again. But in any case, all that was left in his mind now was the glitz and glamour of the metropolis. I wasn't the one who had lost my original intention. This was the first time Joseph had brought me here. But I was used to it and didn't even have the interest to turn my head and take a look. In the past, when negotiating business with big clients, in order to show sufficient sincerity, I would book a table here. The night view on the 38th floor was beautiful, but I often drank so much that I had a stomachache and couldn't straighten up. Joseph didn't endure these hardships, so he shouldn't enjoy these perks. Seeing that I remained unmoved, Joseph twitched the corner of his lips. He signaled the waiter waiting beside us and was just about to present his gift. Then a person walked straight over from the door. She calmly picked up the water glass in front of Joseph and poured it over his head. It was Nora. She was still dressed brightly, worthy of her youth and beauty. But her expression was very cold. Facing the drenched Joseph, she said coldly, word by word, "You regret it, don't you? Why did you bring her here? This is the place where you confessed your love to me. Why are you defiling our love like this?" Hearing this, I raised my eyebrows and looked at Joseph with a narrow gaze. Joseph's face turned livid. Finally, his eyes fell on Nora's stomach, and he said through gritted teeth, "What are you making a fuss about here? Go home quickly." Nora's tears suddenly fell. "I could have had a good career, Joseph. You lured me. You wanted me to be your mistress." She pointed at Joseph, her tone desperate. "Before, you wanted to lock Julia up at home and have an affair with me at the company. But you couldn't lock her up, so you locked me up at home and went after Julia. Joseph, why are you so despicable?" With a slap, Joseph's slap interrupted Nora's words. She opened her eyes wide, her eyes misty with tears, as if she couldn't believe what was happening in front of her. But Joseph just looked at her coldly and asked her if she had calmed down. His tone was nonchalant, as if the person he had just slapped wasn't the intimate lover he had held dear just 2 months ago. "I haven't got the divorce certificate with Julia yet. You're putting on the airs of the legitimate wife too early." He shielded me behind him, didn't let me get involved in the whole process, and behaved politely and like a gentleman throughout. This also made him look even more disgusting. Nora let out a scream and then ran away like crazy. Joseph didn't go after her. He straightened the bow tie on his suit collar, picked up the knife and fork as if nothing had happened despite being wet all over, and said to me with a smile, "Let's continue." I also smiled. "Joseph, I want to slap you." After saying that, I had already stood up and slapped him across the face. I shook my hand and smiled at him, saying, "Sorry, my hand is always quicker than my mind." After that, I picked up my bag and stood up straight to leave. Instead, Joseph laughed out loud behind me. His face was turned to one side from the slap, but he seemed quite happy at the moment. He said, "Julia, you still care. These days, I've been thinking about our past all the time. I don't seem to be happy after losing you." I didn't have the patience to listen to his nonsense and just walked away. Joseph got up and wanted to chase after me, but suddenly a scream came from outside. It turned out that Nora was threatening to jump off the building and said that if Joseph didn't come to coax her, she would jump. In the end, Joseph went to deal with Nora's matter. As for me, I walked very fast, almost wanting to run. Joseph was disgusting, and Nora was crazy too. It would be best if the two of them were entangled with each other for the rest of their lives. I hoped that after Joseph lost his luxury cars, mansions, and the identity of a domineering president, they could still be tied together like this for a lifetime. I didn't know how the incident that night ended in the end. However, there were quite a number of wealthy wives in our circle who often went to that restaurant. Joseph's story spread in the circle. The next day, the way everyone in the company looked at Joseph completely changed. But he had a good mentality and seemed completely unaffected. During working hours, he still wanted to come to my office to talk to me as usual. But I had already changed the password of my office door. Joseph couldn't get in. I had blocked all his contact information. He could only find my assistant and ask her to help convey his longing for me. After being a high and mighty president for 3 years, Joseph hadn't lowered his stance like this for a long time. Seeing that I didn't respond, he even bluntly asked my assistant to tell me. In fact, he had already dealt with all the things that I used to threaten him with long ago. The reason why he was still willing to come to me now was purely because he found that he really loved me. During the month when I went on a trip with Nora, we went to many places where you and I had been together before. I thought I was just dazzled by the past beauty and that what I felt for you wasn't love at all, but at that time, I suddenly realized that as long as the person standing beside me wasn't you, it just didn't feel right no matter what. Julia, I really still love you. When I came back that time, I wanted to keep you, but you didn't even want to give me a chance to speak. He sounded aggrieved, and both I and my assistant felt uncomfortable listening to him. I asked my assistant to send the recording of his words to Nora. Nora had learned her lesson now. She blocked me and wanted to numb herself by shutting out all information. I asked my assistant to send it to her using different numbers. In the end, she couldn't bear it anymore. In the afternoon, she rushed to the company and made a big scene directly in Joseph's office. My little assistant went there and eavesdropped for the whole afternoon. When she came back, she kept muttering, "President Joseph hasn't really divorced yet. How dare she tell everyone that she's pregnant?" Sister Julia, why are you smiling so happily? No, I just thought of something funny. The thought that Nora's child wouldn't be able to take the civil service examination made me couldn't help but curl the corners of my mouth. When the cards were laid on the table, Nora's possessiveness exploded completely. She no longer stayed at home quietly but clung to Joseph even tighter. Joseph originally wanted to restore his reputation in the company, but now his reputation was even worse. And he didn't have the energy to pester me anymore. Time dragged on until the end of the cooling-off period. On the day to get the divorce certificate, he was very reluctant and dragged it out for a long time. It wasn't until I took him out of the blacklist and sent him a message. I told him that if he had served 2 years in prison, I could still sue him for divorce in the name of living separately in different places. Only then did he show up reluctantly. But as soon as he saw me, his eyes turned red. He said, "Julia, I dreamed of our past again. I can't tell at all now whether other people like me because I'm Joseph or because I'm President Joseph." As he said this, he was almost on the verge of crying. "When I wasn't President Joseph before, only you were willing to be nice to me. I was dazzled by money and power. I'm not good, Julia. Could you please give me another chance?" As he said this, he looked at me almost pleadingly and refused to enter the gate of the Civil Affairs Bureau no matter what. I could only look at Nora, who had been following him all the way. Nora rushed over and wanted to hit me, but was caught by the bodyguards I brought with me. Immediately, she started wailing, "Joseph, don't you want the son of the Joseph family? Just watch them bully me like this." Joseph's face darkened. I sneered, "President Joseph, you'd better hurry up. If you hurt the golden grandson of the old Joseph family, your aunt will hate you to death." Hearing this, Joseph closed his eyes in pain. Finally, I successfully got the divorce certificate in my hand. When we parted at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Joseph was still reluctant to part. He looked at me, with nothing but reluctance in his eyes. "Julia, if it's possible." "No way," I looked at him with a smile. "Joseph, considering that I accompanied you through hardships in the past, but in the end, the good things went to others. For the sake of fairness, it's your turn to endure hardships now." Hearing this, Joseph's face turned pale. At this moment, he finally woke up from his dream and realized the seriousness of the problem. He quickly contacted his secretary and rushed to the company. When he arrived at the company, he was informed that he had been dismissed by the board of directors. His former secretary came to see him off. The other person politely asked him to leave and also advised him not to be too high profile. Joseph wanted to contact me again. "You blame yourself and think that if you admit that you have feelings for Marcos, you're betraying Mark." After realizing that I was serious, Joseph calmed down quickly. He might have had a premonition of what was going to happen. He chose to call Nora in the same gentle tone as before on the roadside. They got their marriage certificate as quickly as possible. Joseph also told Nora a lot of things about how to take care of his mother. Nora was immersed in the joy of becoming a wealthy wife and replied perfunctorily. But it wasn't long before their big house was auctioned off by the court. All the luxury cars and mansions were gone. It wasn't until Joseph was summoned by the court and then taken away by the police in front of her that she realized that her husband was no longer President Joseph. The moment Joseph saw his secretary turn against him, he understood that I had already got all the evidence of his economic crimes. He couldn't escape this prison sentence no matter what. In order to leave a servant for his mother who liked to order people around and to leave an heir for the old Joseph family, his choice was to drag Nora down with him. Joseph was always the same Joseph. Peel off that glamorous exterior, and inside was a coward who would always wait for others to save him. Soon, the judgment result of his case came out. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison. He requested to see me in prison, and I agreed. When we met again, both Joseph and I were very calm. He really regretted it now. He said, "I was wrong. I betrayed you. This is the result I deserve." Yes, I thought so too. We were silent facing each other. Just as I was about to get up and leave, Joseph called me back. "Why?" he asked me. "Didn't you come to redeem me? I'm the whole meaning of you staying in this world. Why did you treat me like this?" "I stayed in this world for you, but I'm not stupid." I stood up and looked down at him. "Joseph, I can love others because I know how to love myself. Constantly harming others without benefiting oneself is not redemption but being a bootlicker. I won't do such a thing. Since you didn't want to cherish everything I gave you, then I'll take it back. The reason is as simple as that." Facing Joseph's gaze, I curled the corners of my mouth in a good mood. "Look, you're just back to where you were before I helped you. Penniless, deserted by everyone. Oh, right. Your mother is seriously ill." I looked at him and said with a smile, "Your true love Nora doesn't want to give birth to the son of a criminal like you and wants to have an abortion. Your mother won't allow it. When they were pulling each other, your mother was pushed to the ground and had a stroke and became paralyzed. President Joseph, you'll have a heavy burden when you get out." Of course, Nora didn't get a good result either. Your mother was afraid that Nora would find another man and run away and wouldn't give birth to a child for the old Joseph family, so she scratched her face and publicized everywhere that she was a mistress. Now no one dares to take her. One of them is paralyzed and the other is disfigured. President Joseph, you'll have a heavy burden when you get out. After saying that, I left with a smile, leaving Joseph alone in prison, collapsing and roaring. Actually, if Joseph had enough perseverance, he might not be unable to start all over again after 6 years. Of course, 6 years was also enough time for me to become even stronger. I'm waiting to see if Joseph dares to confront me again after he gets out. However, I didn't expect that Joseph didn't even have this bit of courage. In the 3rd month after he was imprisoned, Joseph committed suicide in prison. The tragic male second lead, whose true feelings could only be seen in hardships, ended his life like this. Joseph's mother was grief-stricken after hearing the news. She struggled on the sickbed for another half a month and finally died too. She was killed by Nora, whose face was disfigured, who pulled out her oxygen tube. Not long after her death, Nora was also arrested. Their stories had all come to an end. As for me, the pitiful redeemer, I lost my love and was left with a pile of money that I couldn't spend up in a promising career. Alas, for the rest of my life, I can only spend it with money.